quicker we are to be able to observe, orient, decide, act, the more likely we are to succeed. To live a happy life, you have to control your mind. Whatever you do is probably not going to work the first time, but that doesn't mean that you're going to fail. It means that you can take the information and continue to move forward. One of the biases we have is this confirmation bias, where we discount any information that goes against what we originally thought. So you're going into an experiment. I'm expecting this, but if this doesn't work, I have to make some adjustments. I gravitate towards a method that was developed by a guy named John Boyd, and he called it Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, OODA. And it's a loop.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, guys, we are back with another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I am your host today. And in our studio, we have Mitch Weisburgh. How are you today, sir?
Great. I'm great. I'm ready to win. Lead us.
I love winning. I love winning. I love that relentless pursuit of winning. I have to be honest with you.
Right. Well, because we can't always win, but we can pursue winning, and we can make that enjoyable also, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, guys, today we are going to talk about mind shifting. We're going to talk about a bunch of things, but one of the things that Mitch and I were just chatting about a little bit is just like mindset when you're going into, when you're experiencing different situations. And I know that as entrepreneurs, that happens. Real quick, though, before we jump into it, if you haven't done it already, I would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get updates every time we drop a new episode. And without further ado, as usual, let's get to it. Mitch, would you mind giving us a little bit background, who you are, what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Mitch Weisburgh. I'm here just outside of the New York City area, and I'm all about allowing people to live happy lives. And basically, in order to live a happy life, you have to be able to control your own mind. In my way of thinking about that, there's really three elements to that. One is to understand how the brain works and to be able to switch yourself from what people have called stinking thinking, right? Into something that's more resourceful. Two is to be able to look at situations and understand that whatever you do is probably not going to work the first time, but that doesn't mean that you're going to fail. It means that you can take the information and you can continue to move forward. And so that's resilience. And then the third part of it is that you're going to be working with other people, and those people are sometimes going to disagree with you. They're going to compete with you. Sometimes they're going to get in the way. Sometimes you don't like them. And that there are ways of working with people in those circumstances so that you all can move forward, and to understand those different ways of working with people to turn conflict situations into situations where it still may be a conflict, but you can collaborate and move forward. That's the third element that I call conflict and collaboration. Those are the three elements. If you know how to do those things, you will be a lot more successful in life and you will be happier.
I like that. I like that. I was thinking while you were chatting, I was thinking about, I'd like to dive into all three elements a little bit more. Um, and what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling is the first component of that has to do with me, what I can control. I can control the way that I think, the way that I perceive what's going on. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Sure. When we go into situations or when things happen, we have, and this is an oversimplification, but we basically have two ways of responding. Okay, one way is through our survival instincts, and with those survival instincts, those were developed in all animals, and human beings are an animal, right? And those evolved in order to keep the organism safe. In order to be safe, you have to be able to react really quickly, focus the entire organism on what it's going to be doing, and just deal with that. You can't wait for a lot of information. So you're taking a very small amount of information quickly, reacting, deciding what to do, and focusing on that. That part of the brain wakes up in like 2, 3 100ths of a second. So it's like that, right? The other way of operating is a lot slower, which is what I call the resourceful parts of the brain, to be able to think critically, to be able to think innovatively, to be able to really connect with others, executive function, aligning to higher level values. I mean, those things are, in the brain, for the most part, again, this is oversimplification, kind of centered in the prefrontal cortex, right here, part of the brain. And I call that the resourceful brain. And the issue we run into is that virtually all the time, by default, something happens. Our survival brain figures out this is what we have to do. This is the threat. And then once our prefrontal cortex wakes up, we've already decided what to do. And so the prefrontal cortex says, oh, we're doing this. This must be the reason. But it's also capable of saying, oh, wait a minute, we're doing this. Is that really what I want to do? And it's that self awareness, metacognition. It's that self awareness that allows us to be resourceful. And that's the internal resourceful parts of the brain is how do you how do you wake up that part of the brain that allows you to be innovative and critical thinking? And sometimes, in order to do that, we first have to quiet our instincts to fight, to flee, to freeze, anger, fear. And so, how do we become aware of those feelings? How do we quiet them down? How do we flush the stress hormones from our brain so that we can connect to our resourceful parts, the prefrontal cortex?
Yeah, that's critical. I mean, the emotional part of us. I mean, it's just so front and center. It's just so powerful. I get happy, I get sad, I get frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what it. How does one get to a place where we're more in control? We talk about, for example, we talk about mindfulness, I
Right.
guess, which where we're kind of stepping back. But how does one make that more of a habit to be able to go forward as you're suggesting?
Well, one part of the answer is that you can start learning how to do that at 3 or 4. So you can continue to learn. Like I'm over 70, okay, and I'm still learning, okay. So it's a lifetime endeavor. But I've worked with teachers who are teaching kids how to be aware of what emotions that they're feeling and how to calm themselves down in preschool, up through middle school, high school, entrepreneurs or whatever. And you do that first of all through what might be called intercepting or self-awareness to know, oh my gosh, I am angry right now. Okay. And sometimes that's enough. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm just reacting to this situation. I don't have to do that. Sometimes you're angry or you're fearful. And so in order to get out of that, you have to flush those stress hormones out of your brain. And you do that by distracting the brain. Now you could do that through mindfulness or meditation. You could do that through working out. You could do that through music. You could do that through art. You could do that through breath work. It's really whatever it is that you're doing, you're not thinking about the problem anymore because the more you think about the problem, the more the stress hormones are in there. You're devoting your focus to something else, and once you devote your focus to something else, in 60 to 90 seconds, those stress hormones start dissipating, and you can tap into your resourceful brain. And then the third part of it is constructive self talk, which is very different from you idiot, you just have to work harder, right? It's more like, gee, what would I really want? Or what would make this fun? Or what if I could do this? So it's questions or statements to yourself that open yourself up. And so those are the three things that we can do for ourselves. Self-awareness, sometimes that's enough. Distraction through mindfulness or exercise or something like we're taking a walk, or positive self-talk. And then the fourth thing is sometimes either because the issue that we're facing is so big to us that we still can't handle it, or because we've gone through trauma and we're traumatized, we need somebody else to help us. And so I find, for example, when I get in a situation like that, well, I was going to say I could call my wife, but sometimes she's the cause of it, so I can't really call her in that case, right? But I could ask my wife, or I could ask my kids are adults, or I could call one of my kids, or I have people who we basically do this with each other. There's a woman out in Washington, and she'll call me at 6 o'clock in the morning her time, or I'll text her and I say I'm stuck right now, and then she'll walk me through it. Sometimes we have therapists, but when for the better we get at this, the more often we can walk ourselves down. But it always helps to have an outlet also who can help, who has the vocabulary, who knows the different things to do, and they can walk you down.
That's critical. I was going to ask about some of those bigger issues. You're running a company, and you've got clients that are upset, you've got team members that aren't delivering, you've got resources that you're short on, and you got this this crap show, and
Right.
it affects us, because especially as entrepreneurs, because I mean we're building something with our hands. It's not like working for another company or something like that. And being able to be in the right mindset to be able to make those decisions, to be able to lead the team, to continue to pursue the win despite everything that's going on. That's a I mean that's a, this is a huge tool.
And I think as an entrepreneur, if I'm going through something big, I might call somebody like Epiphany Consulting and say, Rick, just I have these issues. Can you like walk me off the ledge here? Right. And then, you would be able to say, well, what's happening? What do you really want to happen? Or, something you might say to the person, you seem like you're really wound up right now. Why don't we do some breath work? Something, why don't you go to the gym and work out for half an hour and call me in 45 minutes? And so, as an outsider, you can give that advice to somebody and then walk them through so that they probably, and I'm sure you find this all the time. They already have the solutions somewhere in their head. They just can't access them because they're in this fight or flight or freeze mindset.
Yeah, I see that. It's interesting as I get older. I see like that. The blockers. It's I have the answer. I know what it is, but I'm just not in a place where everything is firing the way that it needs to. And exactly what you said, I have to kind of walk myself down. Just like, okay, let's step away from this. Let's breathe. Let's walk. Let's put our feet in the dirt or something like that, and then come back and address the issue later. And I find that to be just so incredibly important. So thank you for that. It's funny doing it's funny doing like innovation work or doing marketing work or product development, and you talked about how things don't work out. Expect that things don't work out as they're planned,
Hmm.
as you expect them to.
Right, right. Well, what does? Whatever works out the way you expect it to, right? I mean,
Always
so
takes longer.
right. Now this is an entrepreneur, but I love weddings. Okay. So you go
Okay.
to a wedding and you see the two people and they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, right? But they're so happy and that's infectious. But the fact of the matter is there's going to be times where they're going to be right. And you know it because
Yes.
you've been through it, but you're watching them and you're saying, something, I'm going to enjoy this moment. You enjoy the moment too, but there's going to come a time, and they'll probably be, hopefully, they'll be able to work through those, but it's the same thing, right?
So what are your thoughts? I mean, when we do typically, I'm going to say when we're younger, especially, we go into these situations and we have expectations. We
Hmm.
have expectation that we're going to build the thing and people will come.
Right.
And then, when the people don't come, obviously we're crushed. We have to deal with that. And so when going down a particular pathway, I mean, what do you recommend? And what are your thoughts on that?
Give up, find somebody to blame and you're fine. Okay. It didn't work out. Uh, I used this jerk, Mitch Weisburgh. It's his fault. Okay. I'm fine. Now I'm going to go work for the man. You can always do that. Right? So, what do you do? I think, um, in the conflict and collaboration book, we go into this a little bit in the course that's starting the resilient mindsets for long-term success. That's when we really dive into it. It there's two parts of it that we teach. Part one is to understand that most of the situations that we really get into are complex, which is different from complicated or simple. And so when you start understanding the nature of complex issues, nobody has a solution to a complex issue. And anybody who says, I know exactly how to market your product, they're either lying to you or they don't know what they're talking about because nobody knows exactly how to market your product. You're going to be trying things. So the nature of a complex issue is something that's new. Nobody really knows what's going to work. Sometimes you do something what you think is small and it's going to blow up either for good or for little or for bad. Sometimes you're going to do something and because you do that, that changes the whole system. And when the system changes, everybody else changes. And so So in those situations, if you go into the situations knowing that nobody can predict in advance what's going to work, so what you have to learn how to do is how do you try things out that you can learn from? And so that's one is that whole mindset of I'm dealing with a complex situation. There aren't any experts. I may need some experts to do certain things. Like if I'm going to do something over the web, I still need somebody who understands SEO and who understands outreach, who understands social marketing, who understands email. I need those experts so I don't do anything stupid. But I can't rely on those people to tell me the one thing I need to do in order to succeed. They have to work for me. They can't be telling me what to do. So you understand this is a complex problem. You have to try things. That's number one. Number two is what's a methodology that allows you to then take in information and adapt to it. And I gravitate towards a method that was developed in the Air Force in the 1950s and 1960s by a guy named John Boyd. And he called it Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, OODA, Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. And it's a loop, but I'll just go through those four steps. Observing is you're taking in the information, like what's happening. What do I, what's leading me to come to some conclusion. Orient is like, well, based on what I know and what I can find out, what are the different things that I could possibly do? And what do I expect to happen? And so I come up with some alternatives for different things that I could try and what I think is going to cost me and what I think is going to result. Decide is which one of those am I going to do? And then I act, but I'm acting not for the purpose of expecting that it's going to succeed, but I'm acting as an experiment. I'm probing. So, what information is this giving back to me so I can observe again? Like, how well did I do this? And what were the results? And now, what I've learned, I can go back to orient again. Now, what things could I do now? And the better off we are, and the quicker we are to be able to observe, orient, decide, act, observe, orient, decide, act, the more likely we are to succeed. One of the issues that we run into is our brains naturally ignore information that defies what we think is going to happen. So we get tied to a result. I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts with Reed Hansen, and he was saying, he got into this business where he was so sure it was going to work, and it wasn't working. But it was like, I'm just going to do this one more time. I'm just going to do this one more time. And so, what John Boyd would have called that is you get into this incestuous loop. You're observing, you're deciding what to do, but you're deciding what to do based on your predisposition. And so you're ignoring the results. And when you're observing based on what you expected anyhow. And one of the big biases we have is this confirmation bias, where we discount any information that goes against what we originally thought. And so if you are doing this OODA loop well, is you're going into situations and saying, I'm just doing this as an experiment. I'm expecting this, but if this doesn't work, it means that I have to make some adjustments. Maybe the adjustment is I didn't do it well enough and I have to practice. Maybe the adjustment is what I'm doing is I'm going towards the wrong goal. Maybe it is like I thought I could do email, but now, email may not be the right way. Maybe it's social media. Maybe I have to do phone calls. So it's always adjusting and using that information as feedback rather than saying Mitch Weisburgh, it's his fault. I'm going to give up. I'm just going to blame him.
What's interesting is, you look all over social media and you have these guys, these guys pitching whatever it is they're doing. It's like, hey, how am I making $63,000 a month on YouTube or, Amazon or, whatever that is. And they go in with such confidence, and then you've got people that actually do the work, that are saying, hey, what we need to do is we need to get in, we need to develop a strategy, we need to learn from your market, et cetera, et cetera. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're needing a way to be able to, I don't know if it's educate, our consumers, or we need a way to be able to talk to the people that we're potentially going to work with and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this, like I use, like when I'm implementing strategy, it's like we're going to take an iterative process. We're not going to go all the way. We're going to take stages and see how it goes. We're going to learn from that. We're going to adjust and keep moving forward. but that's a conversation that business owners don't always want to have or appreciate. I mean, what do you recommend?
So there's a woman, I think it's Anne Marie LeCunff, Cuynnff, I think her name is, but she has a book called Tiny Experiments, and I love that phrase. And so again, we're in a complex situation. We're trying to establish a business. We're trying, and because it's a complex situation, nobody knows it in advance. So in our minds is to go in and say, what's a tiny experiment that I can do, or what are a few tiny experiments that I can do that don't bet the business. And even though this marketing guru is telling me I have the way for you to make six figures on LinkedIn, it's like, no, nobody has the way. If somebody really had the way, they would be doing it. They wouldn't be saying that they could do it and advertising it, right? So it's saying, well, what's a tiny experiment? And the other part of it is that data shows that when we're going through that orient step, which is coming up with alternatives, that when we consider three or more alternatives, we're like 70% more effective than if we're considering just one or two. Because if you're saying, wow, this person just said I can do this through, I don't know, LinkedIn, or I can do this through Facebook, we're just reacting. If when we get to the point where we consider two alternatives, generally what our mind has done is it said this is the right one and this is the wrong one, and the wrong one is very often so bad that obviously the right one was the one to do. But once we start going into considering really three or more alternatives, we're forcing our brain to do the work to come up with what's something that could work, what's something else that could work. Oh, something, here's three different things. If I wanted to do a tiny experiment, which one or which ones could I try, get the results from, and then if it works, then I put more resources into it. And if it doesn't work, I learn from it and I can try something else.
Yeah, yeah. I love that approach. I love that approach. Awesome. Last piece of this has to do with people.
Right.
I always flashback. I was 17, 18 years old, and I'm working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I made the shift supervisor, and I discovered that people don't do what I say just because I say to do it.
Really?
It was it was mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
Powerful lesson. And then, 15 years later, I learned the same thing in consulting. I'm working with folks. I'm saying, hey, folk, you need to do these things, and they don't want to do it.
Right.
They
Right.
they want to they want to do what they want to do. So, in these situations, I mean, it was
Hmm.
such a powerful lesson for me, just to learn to communicate with people and work together with people. But I want to hear from you, where you are with that. You talk about conflict, you talk about mindset, or mind shifting, excuse me.
Right. Well, I will say it still starts with you, me as the person. Okay. So
Yeah.
if I'm going in and talking to a person and I'm not in a resourceful state of mind, I am not going to go in. I'm not going to be able to collaborate with that person. So the first thing is when you're going in and you're selling somebody, you're advising somebody, you're teaching somebody, you're managing somebody, is going in there and making sure that you're in the resourceful state of mind. And going back to that complex. Anytime we're dealing with people, it's complex. So we don't know what's going to happen. So we have to be prepared that what we do is not going to necessarily have the effect that we want, and that's not going to get us angry. That's going to be information that we're going to be using. And so in that frame of mind is very often making a game out of it. Like I'm managing these employers at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm going to tell them what to do. They're probably not going to do it. And so how can I come back 10 times and still be pleasant and resourceful in my own mind? Now, I may decide that yelling at them is the right approach. Okay. But I'm yelling at them not because I'm angry. I'm yelling at them because I'm thinking that's the right approach. So how am I going to, can I make a game out of being able to respond 10 times where they continue to screw up the stupid thing that they're too stupid to figure out? And all they had to do was follow my instructions. But I'm not going to think that way. I'm going to stay resourceful and I'm going to be able to come back 10 times. And so you generally find that if you can do that and more times than not, you're not going to have to go through 10 times. And then so that's one. And I don't know, you have questions on that or before we go on to another aspect of it?
I was just, it just dawns on me like the resourcefulness piece of this didn't really dawn on me.
Hmm.
There was more acceptance, I think. Still had to figure out how to get the job done. Still had to figure out how to, just to adjust and make things happen.
Hmm.
But I think that I never, I don't know if I should say I never considered, but the coming up with 10 different approaches to influence other people, it's not something that, seems, doesn't seem natural or didn't seem natural to me. I guess that's a practiced habit.
It is a habit, and if you think about sales also, okay, when you're in a situation and you're selling somebody, how often in your does your first close work? And if you're so intent on that first close working and it doesn't, what happens at the rest of the sales? Like you're going to get upset, and the second you get upset, you've lost the sale. But if you go into the sale and say, you know something, I'm going to do some trial closes. Okay, I'm going to say, would you like to get this now? Would you like this in red or would you like it in green? And when the person objects, then and says, no, no, I'm not ready to buy. I'm gonna know how to respond. Like, okay, well, what are you concerned about? And I'm going to be able to reply in a way and ask them a question in a way where they're going to be able to look at me and understand that I'm asking because I'm curious. I'm not asking because I want to manipulate them. And so to be curious is to be resourceful. So how do I stay in curious mode? And they will pick up on that. So whether you're managing people or you're bringing up a kid, you're talking to somebody in relationship with, you're mentoring somebody, you're dealing with customers, all of those is how do take control of yourself to be in a resourceful state of mind and take the information that comes back as feedback that you can stay resourceful.
I love that. I love that. The curiosity thing is really resonating with me. Even going back to when we were talking about like the tiny experiments.
Mhm,
We have to be if we're curious, we can be more objective with the outcomes and make appropriate
mhm.
adjustments.
Right.
Rather than relying on confirmation bias, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So then a second part of dealing with people, and again, whether you're trying to influence people, with your child, like, it's time to do your homework, or your spouse, like, you have to go shopping, or an employee, you have to get, you're gonna have to work till 8, 9 o'clock tonight because this has to be done by tomorrow. All of those are potential conflict situations. As people who study this know, there's 5 different ways of dealing with conflicts or potential conflicts, and to understand how we naturally react and to understand what style the other person is doing allows us to be a lot more effective. So, for example, we think, if everybody thinks like, oh, this collaborative style, that's the master style. I just want to collaborate with people. Well, collaboration requires that both people be in resourceful states of mind. And so if you're not in this curious state of mind, and if the other person doesn't feel connected to you and in a resourceful state of mind, you can't collaborate. Okay. A lot of people, because you're the entrepreneur, you're the one who's making the risk, you're the one who's gotten yourself into the position of making the decisions. A lot of people go into the what would be called the competitive style, like I'll tell you what to do. But you can use that competitive style from your survival brain, or you could use that competitive style from your resourceful brain. And it may or may not be the right thing to do, but you can tell somebody, something, I don't care what you have to do. You're going to stay till 9 o'clock tonight. You're going to stay till 11 o'clock tonight. This has to be done by tomorrow. You're the one who messed it up. You have to do it. You're most likely, as you're saying that from your survival brain, and you may get some compliance, but you've used up a good amount of emotional capital with that other person, and they may comply in a way that looks like they're complying. They may stay late, but they may not do a great job with it. Your goal is to get them to do whatever it is that you need them to do really well. So if the fact of the matter is that they do have to stay until the work is done, it's like, something, I'm really sorry about this. And I would be really upset if I had to do this, but we're in the situation as a company where this has to be done, and it's really your responsibility to do that. Can I rely on you to be the one who gets this done by tomorrow? And if the person says no, then you know that they weren't going to really do it anyhow, and you have to have another response ready. And if they really have to do it, you can be firm about it. You can still stay in you can still stay in that competitive mode, but you can be empathetic with them, and they will respect you even though you're giving them bad news. So that's competitive. That's collaborative. People think of collaborative and compromise as the same thing, but collaborative is like, I know that you want to accomplish this and I want to accomplish that. Let's figure out how we can meet both of our needs, would be collaborative. Compromise would be, you want this, I want that. Let's split the difference. We'll give, and I'm thinking of somebody in particular, but it's like, so we'll split the difference. We'll do 80% of what I want and 10% of what you want. Right. Right. But, in compromise, you somehow rather, whether it's 50-50, see, but you're splitting the difference. Whereas in collaboration, it takes more work, but you're actually collaborating and trying to meet both your needs. And sometimes the situation doesn't call for that. And then there's avoiding, where, something, I have this person, they are so difficult to deal with. I need them to do this work, but something, it's just going to make it worse. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm not going to talk to them. And sometimes avoiding is the best decision, but sometimes avoiding just kicks the can down the road and makes the can grows and becomes bigger and bigger. And then there's accommodating, which is, I may ask somebody to do something, or they may ask me to do something, and I just agree with them. Even though I disagree, it's just like, you want, you're coming to me with a problem. You want me to make the decision. Okay, I think we should do this. Okay, and that would be kind of accommodating their need for you to make a decision as an entrepreneur, or you tell them what to do, and they're accommodating you. So those are the five styles: compete, accommodate, avoid, collaborate, and compromise. It's not like any one of them are the best, but knowing when to use each one in different circumstances and knowing what the other person is using so you can adapt is really important. And having those discussions with the people that you work with, so that you all kind of understand what each of you is doing, in terms of when you have disagreements, or when you are managing them, or when they're dealing with customers. It's like, okay, this customer is doing the compete style. If a customer is doing the compete style and I'm trying to collaborate, I'm going to lose every time, because when I start talking to them about the things that I'm willing to do for them, they're taking that as a sign of weakness, and they're saying, okay, you've just given me these things, now let me ask for a little bit more. And so understanding the styles that other people use, understanding how to react with different styles yourself, becomes critical.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I love the collaborative. Do you is there a way to perhaps guide people from, more that competitive style into a collaboration zone? To me, when we're collaborating, that's a high trust space. And you trust that I've got your best interest. I trust that you got my best interest in mind. Let's move forward.
Mhm.
But the competitive, you're going head to head. It's like, who's going to win? Or is there? Do you have a method, or do you see a way to move people from one space to the other?
So yes, basically, if you want to collaborate, you have to both parties have to be in a resourceful frame of mind, and both parties have to feel that they're connected to the other party. Okay. So you both have to be curious, and you both have to care about each other. When you go into the situations, you first have to get yourself into that frame of mind. You can't force the other person into that frame of mind, but there's things that you can do that make it much more likely that they will take that frame of mind. And first of all, I would say, starting with strengths based feedback. So we tend to look at the other person, and figure out what they're doing wrong, and we're going to tell them. Strengths based feedback is figuring out what you can tell them that they're doing right first. Okay. So find ways to compliment them would be first. That tends to disarm people. Second is asking them questions from a sense of curiosity. Now, the body of thought, or one of the bodies of thought that I teach, and you can look it up on you can find other information on it, is called motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing is a method of asking questions to really get the other person to realize what the issues are, what they're doing that isn't working, and start talking to themselves about what they should be doing in order to solve the problems. And then nonviolent communication is a way of kind of summarizing, this is what we're going to be doing, or this is what you need to do, or this is what you're going to do, and this is what I'm going to do, in a way that doesn't provoke anger. So when you combine those three, and really the book is like 200, mind shifting conflict and collaboration is about 220 pages. About 140 pages is devoted to those three. So it's not like something we can just in 10 minutes or 15 minutes discuss, but you can learn those from the book, or you can look up, how do I use strength-based feedback? You can look that up on the internet. How do I use motivational interviewing? You can look that up on the internet. How do I use nonviolent communication? You can look that up on the internet. I think I do a better job of explaining it, but there's many ways of finding it
Definitely.
out, right?
Definitely, definitely. What's your motivation, behind the whole mind shift work that you're doing?
So the like the straw that broke the camel's back was, I was asked, I guess around 2017. I was just, in a meeting, and somebody says, "Mitch, what's your mission? Talk to us." And like there's 70 people in this, and I don't know why they called on me, but they called on me. And it just like hit me that, something, our whole education system should be a way to take every person and lead them to have great lives. And we're failing everybody. And so then it was like, well, okay, so if we're failing everybody, like Mitch, what are you going to do about it? And like within a day or two, a university emailed me and said, can you talk about education technology to our undergraduates? And I'm like, no, education technology has not made a positive impact in the lives of kids. I don't care. I'm not talking about that. But you know what I'll talk about? I'll talk about how successful people navigate situations so that they can be successful. And that's what we should be teaching kids. And so I agreed to put together a 2-day workshop for that. I taught 70 college kids in a face-to-face workshop, and at the end of it, like they cheered at the end. You can see like all of this is learnable, all of this is teachable. We know this. People aren't learning it. That should be my mission. And I mentioned I'm over 70 years old. It's like, what should my role be? My role should not be earning money for myself and advancing myself. My role should be paving the way for the next generation or next generations to be successful. And so that's my mission, is like, how do I help these, how do I help people to live fulfilling lives? That's my motivation.
I love that. I love that. And you've got a goal of what, 50 million people?
I would love 50 million
People?
people. So, there's what, 7 billion people on the planet. And so I figure if we could get 5 million to be able to think this way, that's enough of a critical mass to just tilt everything, because those people will be the models, and they're going to be able to inspire everybody else. And so then we get to 50 million, and then we get to 100 million, and then we get to, 7 billion. My first big goal is, how do we get to 5 million people?
Do you have an answer for that, or is that
Well, so I spend a lot of my time teaching teachers. I spend my time on podcasts. I am adding material where people don't have to take a course and they don't have to read a book in order to have discussions on these topics and start learning them on their own. So I'm creating a bunch of discussion guides that people can download, pull together in groups, and for example, among themselves, talk about, well, what are the different styles that we use in order to mitigate conflict? Why are the different reasons that we react instead of respond, and what can we do about it? So that people can have those discussions, and they can start for themselves figuring that out.
so you wrote the book on the topic. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, there's two books. There should be three. There will be a third book, but I wrote the first book, which is Mind Shifting: Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. That came out in December of 2024. While I was writing that book, I was teaching the three courses. where it came out was that when I started talking about conflicts, everybody was so like, my gosh, we're in such a divisive world. I'm just feeling I'm fighting with everybody. Nothing I'm doing is registering with other people. And then it's like, oh my gosh, now I realize when I say these things, this is the reaction that people are having. And I'm just trying to help them. Or when people are saying these things, that's why I'm reacting so vehemently, but I don't have to. I can control myself. So normally I would have done the resilience book second because that's the second course, but I skipped ahead to the third course as the second book that came out. That was the conflict and collaboration book, and that came out in December of 2025. And then this summer, I'm going to start working on the resilience book.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Question I ask all my guests. The name of the podcast is The Relentless Pursuit of Winning.
Right.
People can typically define what winning looks like. It could be something small, it could be something big. The harder part is that relentless pursuit. So my question for you is, what would you advise someone in order to help them maintain that relentless pursuit of whatever they're after?
So I think most studies show that we are happiest when we're overcoming problems that we feel that we can solve. And when you think about the relentless pursuit, that relentless pursuit is the process of doing things that we think that we can solve. So it's like looking at the situations and it's figuring out what we can do that we can have some hope for, the things that we can control, understanding that the first things that we're going to do probably aren't going to completely solve it, but we're going to learn from them and we're going to have fun doing it and we're going to keep on doing it. And so to me, that would be the relentless pursuit, is understanding that the things that give us the greatest amount of happiness is when we're in that sense of flow, when we're really solving problems. We get into those by solving things and by working with things that we're not fully able to do, but we have a degree of confidence that we can, and to be constantly taking the information in and figuring out our next step. That would be, to me, the relentless pursuit of winning, success, happiness, and they're all related, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great response. You have a giveaway for our audience. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I talked about these conversation guides that allow us to start making sense of these different aspects of mind shifting. And so the one that we did first is for people to discuss different conflict styles. So whether you're selling or managing or dealing with family, you're always going to be in situations where you think somebody should do something and they think they should do something else. They think you should do something, you think you should do something else. So understanding those different conflict styles so that we can get into the styles that allow both sides to move forward, I think is a really important component of winning, of being successful. And so in the show notes, there's going to be a link to be able to download that. And that'll be a conversation guide. You'll take the guide, pull together somewhere between 3 and 20 people, and then use the guide as a conversation so that with those people, you can start moving forward. And I would say, as a business owner myself for many years, these are the types of conversations that you really want to have with the people who are on your team.
That's amazing. I love that download. I love that. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
So my website is mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And from that website, there's a contact me button. You can, I have a weekly newsletter. So if you want to get tips on how to use different aspects of mind shifting, whether it's being resourceful or resilient or dealing with conflict or collaboration, you can sign up for the free newsletter. There's links to the books, there's links to the courses, and there's a lot of free downloadable materials in there. So mindshiftingwithmitch.com would be the best way to get in touch with me. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I would say find me on Facebook, but Facebook, you're mostly going to see dad jokes because that's what I mostly put on Facebook. Okay. I'm on Substack a little bit also, but the website is probably the best place.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Mitch, thank you so much. This has been enjoyable and educational. I really appreciate it.
Well, Rick, thank you, and keep on winning, right?
Absolutely. Keep on winning. I love it. And folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.